بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يجعل نياتنا خالصة لوجهه الكريم. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. قال الله تبارك وتعالى: ليس كمثله شيء وهو السميع البصير. Allah mentioned, after I begin with the name of Allah and praising Allah and asking Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala to grant us the sincere intentions and to facilitate for us, because nothing is facilitated except that which Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala facilitates. And I remind myself and I remind you with the verse in Al-Quran in Surah number 42, verse 11, where Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala says, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ, which means that nothing, absolutely nothing, resembles Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, and He is attributed with hearing and sight. And Allah mentioned in the Quran, هَلْ تَعْلَمُهُ لَهُ سَمِيًّا, do you know of anything, which is negating, that is similar, that is like Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala? And since we know the answer is an affirmative, absolute no, that nothing resembles Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala in any way, not fully, not partially, not even in one way. Nothing resembles Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And this is understood by the statement of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, that great Imam, the Imam of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah in his time, when he said, مَهْمَا تَصَوَّرْتَ بِبَالِكَ فَاللَّهُ بِخِلَافِ ذَلِكَ. Whatever you imagine in your mind, Allah is different from that. And I wanted to start this program off, which is titled Moderation in the Midst of Extremism. And this is part 2. We talked last week, beginning with it. So this is part 2. I wanted to start with a verse or some verses and a saying that is verses and sayings of moderation. And the moderation is at-tanzih. It is to clear Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala from any resemblance to created things. And the extreme in that is the excess of al-Wahhabiyya. Yes, I said Wahhabiyya. And I meant Wahhabiyya. Even if they call themselves Salafiyya, Athariyya, Hanabila, those people with all those different names, Wahhabis, that's who I'm talking about. That's an extreme, which is resembling Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to His creation in meaning, even if they don't say it in words. I want you to catch that. An extreme and in belief of al-Wahhabiyya, so-called Salafiyya, so-called Athariyya, so-called Hanabila, whatever you want to call it, the students of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, Al-Albani, Bin Baz, Ibn Uthaymeen, Muqbil, and ultimately Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya and Ibn Taymiyyah, those people in our time. those people have the extreme belief of resembling Allah to his creation, though they may say that nothing resembles him, but in meaning, when you take what they give you, it is nothing but pure resemblance, at-tashbih wa tajsim, in meaning. So even if you don't use the words, the meaning is well understood. May Allah protect us from that extremism. Then the other extreme that exists and existed in the past more than our time is the denial of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala's attributes. To deny. And that is to say Allah is not attributed with those attributes that Allah mentioned about himself in the Quran and that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned about him in the Sunnah, in which the nation have agreement on. These attributes, to deny them in an effort to avoid likening Allah to his creation, is an extreme. The middle, the aspect of moderation in that is to affirm the attributes of Allah as Allah intended them when he mentioned them in the Quran, and to affirm those attributes of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned in the hadith according to how he intended them. So the scholars, they say, I believe in Allah and what Allah revealed according to the meaning Allah intended. And I believe in the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and what he conveyed according to the meaning of what he intended, salawatullahi wassalamu alayhi. That is the middle ground. That is moderation in belief. And I started with this because there is extremism. And the common people, which we are all among the common people, we suffer oftentimes how to navigate through extremism and find moderation. So I wanted to open with that. And there is a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam related by Imam al-Bukhari in his Sahih, when he said, كَانَ اللَّهُ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ شَيْءٌ غَيْرُهُ. Allah existed fil azal, eternally, in eternity, without a beginning. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ شَيْءٌ غَيْرُهُ. And there was nothing else existing. Only Allah existed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala existed with his self, his attributes, and his actions. And none of that changed as a result of the creation. And everything other than Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala is the creation. This is the creed of moderation in relation to Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala and his attributes. And I am aware, in my city particular, Atlantic City, a revival of the anthropomorphists and the corporealists, the Mushabbiha and Mujassima, which they were known in the time of the Salaf. The people who had those ideas that the modern day Salafi, Wahhabi, Athari, Hanabila, who have these same followings in books that they teach. In the early days of the Salaf, they were called Al-Mushabbiha and Al-Mujassima. Those who resemble Allah to his creation and give him bodily attributes. So the modern day Mushabbiha and Mujassima, they have these extremes. And it is upon us As Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala mentioned in the Quran about this nation, it is upon us to enjoin what is right and forbid what is wrong. Those who know, know, and those who do not know, do not know. Whether they like it or not, we have to explain the truth. It is an obligation upon the Muslims to do that, because the nation of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is given a status because of that. And Allah mentioned in the Quran, كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله. You are the best nation brought from the human race, from the people. You enjoin what is right, you forbid what is wrong, and you believe in Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. This is Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. This is moderation. And some of us, we're tired of hearing quote unquote refutations. But if we even tired of that, we should never be tired of the truth. And the truth, when it's explained, may sound like the refutation. And in reality, it is a refutation, but not in the negative sense. It is clarifying truth from falsehood. And if we really love one another for the sake of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, and the Prophet told us that when he said, none of you truly believe until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. So if we really want salvation and guidance for the others, and we see that someone is missing that, it is an obligation to explain it to them. You know, when we were kids, they used to say, the bully is really not that tough. All you got to do is stand up to him. And most of the time, he's not able to defend himself. Those Wahhabiyah, so-called Salafiyah, have bullied our communities far too long. So someone needs to stand up, and you will see they're not that strong. When you stand up and you learn, they are thieves. They stole the tradition of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah and then switched it up. Everyone they quote among the Salaf, among the great scholars of Hadith, they actually think they were deviants. But they cannot function without their books. This is true if you just examine with truth. And moderation also entails a level of fairness. And if you examine their works, examine their master's degrees and their PhDs and the work they did to do it, you'll see it's an object, it's an effort of what? Perverting our tradition. Just examine what they do. Examine the works that they do and the way they so-called praise scholars, and then examine the real creed of those scholars. Read their books. You'll see these people hate the scholars. That's why they replaced them with only a few people. Abdullah bin Baz, Muhammad Saleh ibn Uthaymeen, Muhammad Nasiruddin al-Albani, Muqbil Hadi al-Wadi, Rabi al-Madkhali, and a few others, Saleh Fawzan, as if these were the great scholars. And they are not even nowhere near the level of the scholars they refute, past and present. So we mentioned this to start off with it. Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah are the people of moderation. In creed, al-Asha'ira wal-Maturidiyya. In fiqh, al-Hanafiyya, al-Malikiyya, al-Shafi'iyya, al-Hanabila, and Ahl Tasawwuf. And inshallah, during this discussion, we're going to mention many things. But I want to say this. As Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said to Sayyidina Ali, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu wa karramallahu wajhah, if Allah guides by you one person, it is better for you than a red camel. In another narration, it is better for you than the dunya and everything it contains. So that is my opening. As you will know where we're going to go. If one or two or three or many of you learn the correct creed and protect yourself from at-tashbih, resembling Allah to his creation, or at-tajsim, or giving Allah bodily attributes or meanings, then we've done our job. And may Allah accept. Even if we fall short in other things, we didn't fall short in explaining the creed of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. And that was the first mission of the Prophet ﷺ. Because, you have people today, they think at Tawheed and automatically come to their mind Wahhabi because of the propaganda. At Tawheed is not the property of the Wahhabis and Salafis. At Tawheed is the belief of the Prophet ﷺ and every Muslim who follow them. Even if they try to redefine at-Tawheed as Junaid al-Baghdadi, that great Imam of the Sufis from the Salaf, who said, at-Tawheedu ifradul qadimi min al-muhdath, that at-Tawheed, the divine oneness, is to distinguish Allah from his creation, the one who has no beginning from the created event. And if you ain't doing that, you don't understand Tawheed at all. May Allah help us. May Allah guide us. May Allah protect us. And I'll pass the mic to one of my beloved Imams.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Inna alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulihi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsani ila yawmiddin wa ba'd. Alhamdulillah, we'd like to welcome you all to tonight's broadcast of the Black Imams Roundtable. I'm Imam Faheem, aka Five Buffalino, the quiet gangster, the prop gangster. MashaAllah. So I'm glad you all joining us tonight, MashaAllah. Please be sure to like and share this and put us in that algorithm. And also, please be sure to help us to clear our suggested goal of $500 a week, which pans out to about $10 per person that we request. We ask you to donate, inshallah. And so we get 50 people or 100 people that we usually get or more. It makes it very easy for all of us to donate. And some of us, we have the ability to donate 2 or 3 times, or we are able to donate for 5 people besides ourselves. And inshallah, help us to reach this goal kind of quickly, inshallah. We ask Allah, who's the subhanahu wa ta'ala, to double and multiply your reward. So, mashallah, as many of you know, last week I wasn't able to attend as I was traveling. And I was able to catch some of the roundtable. And, so we've been discussing Dr. Yasser Qadi, inshallah, and, some things in his books and some videos that are floating around with some of the statements that he's been making. And just as you mentioned just now, Imam Amin, I've been reading this book, and I'm almost complete. I'm up to the and so it's divided into 6 chapters, and and then sub chapters in. So I'm in the 5th chapter. Then it's the 6th chapter. Then it's the epilogue and conclusion, the epilogue, and the bibliography. And so if we continue next week, I'll be able to give a precise review or analysis of the book. But it was just one note that I had just came across when you were talking about some of their scholars, and particularly when the University of Medina was open, right? Which it opened up in 1961, which is relatively new. It's relatively new as far as a scholarship, as a school or university. And I remember putting this I was listening to one of these videos where Dr. Qadi was on, and he said that, that this university became, it was like the premier university in the world. He said this on one of the videos, that this became the premier university in the world, right? And so when he said that, because I really wanted to get down and take notes with the videos and like at the mark that he said it. So nobody won't say that we're lying on him or anything like that. These are things that you can view. But I got the book. And so in one of the sections where they were talking about when IUM opened, or the Islamic University of Medina, it was said that when this is a excerpt from it, a highlight, it says, when the IUM was founded, Saudi Arabia lacked qualified teachers to run the Islamic studies program. Most Wahhabi scholars focus on theology, and so the Wahhabi scholars mean that's called the tripartite Tawheed. That's the word. You know how we say Trinitarian Tawheed? He used the word in his book tripartite, and so you can look that word up, because some of the words I had to look up, because this is an academic work and we are not academics at all. And so, tripartite, I thought it was some type of sugar additive or something. Like, I ain't gonna make it for it. So it said they lack qualified teachers to run the Islamic studies program. Most Wahhabi scholars focus on theology, with many also being advanced in their familiarity with the Hanbali school of Islamic law. And that's taken with a grain of salt. However, very few have mastered the more intricate Islamic subjects like Islamic jurisprudence, fiqh, usul fiqh, Quranic exegesis, tafsir, the hadith sciences, or Islamic history. As a result, the IUM was forced to recruit its teachers from outside the Wahhabi circle, including the Ahlul Hadith scholars from India and Pakistan, Salafi scholars from Egypt, and even Ashari scholars from Al-Azhar University. And so if you remember when we talked about, we did discuss this a little bit, the Wahhabi movement consider everybody outside of their circle as kuffar. And, in their writings, they would tell people not to travel to these lands, not to travel to Egypt, not to travel to Sham, not to travel to Iraq, because these were the places of the mushrikeen. These are the lands of the polytheists. And so subsequently, when they had to open up their university, they had to get these same kind of people that they called kuffar and deviants to run their school, And then in another part of the thing, it says that the Asharis, even though they taught there, they were limited and restricted in teaching Aqidah, and it goes to show, because then it would make them look as incompetent as they were with respect to Aqidah, And so they didn't even have the other sciences down. And then when you think about it, him calling it on his video, calling it the premier learning center, in the world, many of these people who went there as great, as the accomplishments that they made, because if you hear it now, in University of Medina is like the place to go. They were already deprived when they went there because of the curriculum. They didn't even have the basic stuff down, to begin with, And, Dr. Cardi said in another video about, the learning and stuff that went there and teachers. And he said, one part he said, I have so many ijazahs, I don't know how many, I can't remember, And so, so he said I think he said his, what he specialized in was hadith in the university. I believe he said that. Yeah. So that was his field of study, and alongside with da'wah, I believe it was. And so just looking at the whole movement, and especially with respect to Dr. Yasser Qadhi, the book is well put together, as far as how he's connecting the whole movement from the beginning of the time. Well, he goes apart back to the early Salaf, right? And but he's only concentrating on the Hanabila, right? And then you get a feel that, he's talking about the movement, he's talking about scholars in the Hanbali school, and then he kind of goes to Ibn Taymiyyah, but he doesn't mention, and I guess because he's really discussing, Salafism or Wahhabiyah, it's almost as if the other scholars who were already established, like the likes of Imam al-Ghazali and those before him, like they were non-existent. So I wrote in one of my notes as a sidebar, I got this little Kindle. I'm a little excited about it, because you could write in and write notes, and you can, have marginal notes, right? And so I was like, what were these scholars doing at the time when these people was trying to figure out, you know, if Allah, you know, had literal attributes, right? And some of the Hanabila, which is well known, that they fell into anthropomorphic leanings, saying that Allah, Wa'yadu Billah, had, that he was like a handsome boy. He had these body parts and stuff like that, and all this nonsense. Wa'yadu Billah, right? And then he basically said that it wasn't until the time he started saying around Ibn Qudama, and then he mentioned Ibn Taymiyyah, that almost like he was the savior of theology, in the Hanbali school, And so when you read his book and in the videos, because a couple of videos that I watched that we reference here, he basically I just lost my train of thought. But he basically was saying that Ibn Taymiyyah was like the champion of Aqidah, right? But he's all over the place because this is what he said in the video, that he said he walked away from Salafism, but he's not an enemy to them, right? And so he kind of alluded to like he left the movement. He said this in numerous places. But what I'm gathering from him is that it's hard for him to give up Ibn Taymiyyah. It's very difficult for him to give up Ibn Taymiyyah. And in the writings and in the videos, he's still trying to include him, like be all inclusive. Okay, yeah, he made a mistake here, but so did all of these other strands. He used the word strands loosely, and so it's really, so he didn't really walk away from it. It's just hard for him to come to terms that he was really deprived. And then for many people, when they look at these people who graduate from Medina, they have a master's in hadith and they have a PhD in this and that. And of course, if you hear that from somebody coming from America, coming from the hood, somebody who probably didn't finish middle school, that seems like something remarkable, something that's laudable, right? But when you compare it to actual knowledge, it's really nothing. And it's not to slight any of those people, because they made an effort to try to do something. And I'm pretty sure they had good intentions to want to learn Deen and wanted to do those things. But they were deprived from the place where they were seeking to grow, right from the very beginning, that the institution wasn't really set up to teach traditional Islam. And another thing he said, because I was reviewing the video today, but I didn't really get a chance to finish it. Someone, they asked him about this issue about, the movement being funded by petrodollars, right? So that's how it becomes so famous. And so some of the things he's saying is like, so he said, yeah, no one came and put money in my hand, right? Of course they did, man. Like, what I'm saying? We're talking about somebody funding the whole movement and blocking out anything else that countered the movement. So now that if, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, if you're talking Ashari and Maturidi, if you talk about Tasawwuf, if you're talking about fiqh, it seems something that's strange. But these are the elements that held the Ummah together for 1,000 years or more than 1,000 years, right? And so now this stuff seems strange when we're talking about issues about tanzih and tafweed and all of these things, talking about ta'wil, and now this seems like it's something that's alien, at least for some people. But for our listener audience, of course, you all know. But if you talk to people about these things and having discussions, these things are strange because of the effort of those petrodollars and making sure that information was hid. Books were distorted. In his book, he talked about Al-Albani and when he started writing hadith, and he had the person who was, who worked at the printing press, who owned the printing press, and then they ended up having a falling out, And so, I mean, the book is pretty good as far as linking the whole Wahhabi movement and the different strands, like he says, the Madkhalis, the Jihadi Salafis, the Wahhabis, the pacifists, and all of those different groups that he names, right? And so then he brings it up and then he says about different waves, like the first wave of Wahhabiyyah, like during the time of Ibn Abdul Wahhab, but then the second wave and the third wave, and then a fourth wave. And then in the video, he was talking about, I think they asked him like, would this still be remaining? He said, yeah, it will be some elements that still remain. Like, and of course, with all these splinter groups, they never really go away all the way, but they just have to change their name and they have to change their identity, And so the book is as an academic read, and it's pretty good, as far as historical references, right? But on the videos, Dr. Yasser Cardi is kind of like, all over the place, man. And he mentions a few times, like, how he was like he say he was the rock star of the movement. He was the rock star of the movement, and for 20 years. And I caught a part of it. He said since he was like in his teens that he used to buy these Wahhabi books, and then he used to buy them in bulk and then used to sell them at a regular price, without making a profit, just to get the information out there. And then he acknowledges that he was so engrossed in the movement that he was the first one, I think, to translate one of those Wahhabi books. And he said he used to be on a tour, like weekend seminars, just teaching, Kitab al-Tawheed, and intensive stuff like that. And so, I don't know if that's around the time when he really started, recognizing that, it was cap, as Imam Amin said before we came up. It was cap, and he finally, he had an awakening, And so at that point, and listening to his dialogue, that kind of resonated with me a little bit, because I was, not on his level, not engrossed in it, but I was in the Medkhali movement, and, being, with all of these names and happen to know, keep up with the Minhaj Joneses, as I call it, knowing all the scholars who was off of it, who was warned against, who had their mistakes in their Minhaj, who has been thrown off, and then it was like a point. I remember a point where it was like you just waiting and trying to determine who's going to be next. Like, okay, it's kind of clear they threw this one off, they threw that one off. Who's next, right? Let's make a wager about it. I guarantee he's going to be this one because he said this, and it was he didn't have any proof for his statement and it's all that nonsense. So, and then this ended up being a big falling out, and I could just imagine how it is for him. And because he mentioned some of his colleagues that, at first they would have differences because he said, the hardcore Medkhali always was on his top, from the beginning, ever since he came back to America. But now he's having falling outs with his colleagues, that really don't even speak to him no more, at the organizations that he was, a part of their board or the administrator or even the president of some of these, these online institutions that he no longer is involved with them, And so he's just going through a thing. But one of the things that's kind of disturbing is how he keeps trying to like rename and redefine things, right? What's the term that he used? So he'll say that, I'm not a card carrying member of Salafiyah, like I don't adhere to one madhab, and then another thing he mentioned, he said at the end, close to the end of the video, that what he would like to do is see like people who, select people to go behind the scenes, behind the closed doors, and hash out all these issues, that we're discussing about Aqidah, about fiqh, and all this kind of stuff, where we differ in that. And then, after we finish hashing it out, then, we go eat lunch, then pray together, right? And and that sounds nice, and that sounds nice, ideally, right? But then the other part that he says that, so he was alluding to, like, this is not for the regular people to be engaged in these kind of things. So one of the things that he said was like, we're arguing about, if Allah is over his throne, while people getting bombed in Gaza, we're losing our children to Deen and all that kind of stuff. Okay, fine and well. But, all of these issues have to be discussed. But then in another note, he's saying like how exciting it was for the layman to be exposed to like science of hadith and be able to look at these issues for themselves. And, this is part of the Wahhabi movement where a person who doesn't have any real knowledge think they have the ability to ask someone what their dalil is and all that kind of stuff, instead of just following authoritative scholarship. And so, this is very, very common with them. Where's your dalil, akhi? Just quote to me. And somebody sent me a video of another brother that I almost felt like crying for him, because you can see he's in that mode of, of a pure madkhali, like just quote to us Quran and Sunnah, that's all I want to hear. Where's the proof that we're wrong? Can you give an ayah from the Quran? Can you give something, can you give a hadith? And so they give this impression that Islam is black and white like that. If you can't give me a clear ayah, and almost as if, like when we have a discussion that we just supposed to be reciting Quran and hadith in the regular discussion, and every time I come across these people, like I hear somebody say, like, I'm like, hey, Assalamu alaikum, Maki, how are you, man? What's up? Oh, Allah and his messenger. Okay, that's a given. What else is up? What's going on with you, man? Like, you know what I'm saying? How are you doing? Like, you know what I'm saying? And, Tayyib, and then start talking, like, just recite Quran to me, like if we having a casual discussion, that's how people talk. Like we just reciting verses in hadith, and other than that, we're doing vain talk. Like this is it's crazy, man. But so I was thinking, like, how does he, think that these issues that we're discussing, that we try to clarify when we're talking about istiwa and Allah's wajh and Allah's yad and all of these things that we are making clear to people. He doesn't want these things to be discussed amongst the awam, right? But he wants the awam to be able to challenge things that, that they are not even equipped to challenge, right? They're not equipped to, even if you told them where the dalil was, they wouldn't know where to find it. They wouldn't know the references and stuff like that, So, and a lot of things. And like I said, I didn't really get a chance to review all of it, but the book I'll be finished, inshallah, and to give more insight on it, and go back and watch these videos. If we do, are we doing a part 3, Imam?
I would like, which would be beautiful, is that we use the points that are mentioned in his book, because he made some good points, but have a critical analysis of what he's talking about.
Okay.
Because even though he says the book is academic, it is really not academic at all, except by wording. But the meat and potatoes of the matter is very simple, right? It is typical Wahhabi talking points.
Yeah.
The problem with many of us, we're so afraid of Wahhabis because of our ignorance. I hate to say it, but most of us are bullied by the Wahhabis, Salafis, because we're ignorant of the deen ourselves. When you learn, that stuff is laughable when you learn. So I have many people, one I'm looking at right now, be like, Imam, lighten up, because you can't handle Wahhabis. You don't know enough Quran, you don't know enough hadith, you don't know scholarly consensus, you don't know scholars, you don't know chains of narrations, and the Wahhabis just beat you up with nonsense because you didn't learn. So I'm saying that while I'm throwing stomach blows, because since we had it, if you engage me for 1 second.
1 second.
Since they didn't mention me, I'm not going to mention them, but we all know who we're talking about, right? They're having lectures in my own city about me. I'm right here. Why are you having a big talk about me? I'm right here. You don't got to talk about me. We can have the discussion. But you know what? They know themselves. A discussion with me is disastrous because you get 8 for breakfast. That's real, especially the ones who's talking. Like, your knowledge is horrible, even on Wahhabi standards, Salafi standards. Sometimes I'll be like, how the hell you graduated? I really be like that. This dude's a graduate. He's a buffoon. He doesn't even understand his own stuff, let alone listen. When they make mistakes talking about Ash'aris, I understand you don't even know Salafi stuff. How you gonna talk about Ash'aris? You don't even know your own stuff. Your own scholars, if they spoke English, they would have a heart attack listening to you, right? And you bet that's why they say we don't talk to deviants. We're not coming on a round table. You bet not. Not you. You definitely better not come on a round table. All right. That was my shot back. Because I really want to light them on fire, but I'm already called the bulwark bully, right? I don't want that reputation. I really rather us learn. But serious, if we learn a lot of these things that are so academic, so knowledgeable, like you have a guy, he's trying to impress people who don't speak Arabic with Arabic, and he doesn't speak Arabic himself, right? So he's yatni. Listen, bro, no one sitting there understands Arabic. Who are you impressing? Not one of those people sit and listen to you understand Arabic. So what's your point? And then anyone who understands Arabic, no, you don't understand Arabic. So what's the point? So you might as well just express the idea, because you butchering the books of the scholars trying to read them is not flying for someone who knows. I mean, they're not going to judge you. You're an American. I got it. So you saying like Yatni and all that, like you understand Arabic. You don't. You got out of the Arabic program. You barely read books. You haven't read scholars' books. Put a scholarly book in front of you, you in trouble. All you can read is the parroted books that they taught you in the university, Bin Baz, Albani books, and you ain't reading advanced books. These are very simple pamphlets. Like all of them are little small pamphlets. These are not big books, right? And you screwing that up. What is if we put you in the books of the scholars? You in trouble. And that's why they don't talk about scholars. All right, that was just my shot back. And in saying this, so what we need to do is while we're explaining stuff, we need to critically analyze each point. And we can't do them all. We got to do it step by step by step, right? Like, don't be like the Wahhabis. They just run from point to point because anything they talk about will be shut down in minutes. So they'll run to another point. So they'll talk about the attributes of Allah, then they'll talk about shirk, then they'll go to bid'ah, then they'll go to this. Stop running. Would you stay in one place? Let me beat you up right here. Then we move to the next thing. All right, that's my hood coming out. Just one plot. After we finish dusting you off there, then go to the next point. But don't get, you keep running so you never get addressed. One point. And listen, we already know that they received an inferior education. That's well known. You mentioned it. Yasser Qadi, who was the best of them. Keep that in mind. None of them, all them dudes you see, these brothers, they be like, I graduate. None of them reached his level. That's what's so insulting. And they know it. When they used to be sitting with Rabi and Madkhali, they would have him doing translating. A bunch of brothers. And that's why you notice he don't hang out with none of them, right? Like, I know y'all wasn't smart in school. And here's something you don't realize. A lot of these guys are not that bright. They got a free education. They're not educated. Saudi needed to put out their information. They came to the inner cities and different places, found some scholars. They don't care. Put you in the Arabic for a couple years, stamp you. You're going back to them. Do you notice any of them really teaching in Saudi Arabia? They're all graduates. Did you see any of them with a scholarly position in Saudi Arabia? Absolutely not. Not a one, right? And if you see that, so that tells you something, right? So I say, while we're discussing, please, let's also tell them the Sunni position, and let's not run away from a scholarly discussion. So since we're talking academics, let's take point by point. You don't got to rush, because the important thing is that we understand. So let's agree on some points, and that I would prefer not a debate. See, everything they're looking for is a debate. They know they're not going to win no debate. Why don't we just have a discussion? We're independent people. We can just have a discussion, right? We don't understand you. You explain yourself. How about that? We don't understand you. Let's give it that the Black Imam Roundtable, they don't understand Salafiyah. because that's the run. If they think Yasser Qadhi is Salafi, then they don't know what Salafi is. Great. Why don't you tell us what Salafi is? Why don't you do it? Why don't we get to question you? Since you talking, right? We're on the front line talking. So that's like me saying, listen, if I'm talking, you talking, if I'm talking, I don't need to go run and get my sheikh about the issue, right? Or I shouldn't be talking to the issue. I should just let the sheikh talk about the issue. I should talk about what I can talk about. And since I can talk about what I can talk about, then I can have any kind of discussion with it. It's not, it's an information session. And since, we want to guide people, everyone wants to do that. Well, then it's not hostile. Even though it may sound, we understand that point. So that's what I mean. So yeah, I want to continue the discussion, but I wanted to also have some context of an analytical type approach. Let's really examine what he's saying, because they'll just write Yasser Qadhi off as if he's a deviant. That's the easiest way not to have a discussion, because none of them can have a discussion with him. Trust me, not a one. Like all them strands of Salafiyah, not one of them American dudes can have a real discussion with Yasser Qadhi. He's at the top of the class. He'll eat them for breakfast. They know it, right? So, and remember, he's one of them. And he's telling you, I haven't changed. I just don't believe in the extremism they go to no more. But I love my teachers. I love Al-Albani. I love Bin Baz. I love Ibn Uthaymeen. They are my heart. He opens his book talking about the greatest moment where he just sat knee to knee with Ibn Uthaymeen. The man is not unintelligent. He's very smart. So the point is, he ain't talking to black folks, so we're not having that conversation with him. But y'all Salafis, y'all can have that conversation. And I mean, if it's false, prove it. It's false, prove it. And that's what I say with us. If we're false, prove it. And y'all both know firsthand, we don't run from a discussion. Let's have the discussion. If you're truly about guidance, there's nothing you can lose when you learn. You cannot lose if you're truly about guidance. So that's what I like. So yes, with that addition, let's really, because I'm ready to really dig into the book. That's all I've been doing. I've been slow, point by point by point, because not everything those Wahhabis say are wrong. Some things we agree with. Where we disagree, since you have an authoritative text, and if they saying he's not authoritative, they got to say why, right? And while I'm firing rockets, what's your boy's name? I'm gonna call him out personally because he's a big fan of us.
Who's my boy? My boy or Imam Naeem's boy?
What's his name?
That's my Imam Naeem's boy, ain't it?
Yeah, what's his name, Imam Naeem? I gotta give him a shout out.
What are you talking about?
The Malcolm X dude. The one who made the Netflix guy.
Oh
yeah.
Abdullah Muhammad.
Why y'all don't remember the black man like y'all remember Yasser Qadhi? Why he got to be a second thought? He's an academic. He's a Howard graduate. Yeah. He has some status. He's an academic. Why he gets forgotten? He's always following. I welcome you to, what's his name?
Abdurrahman Muhammad.
Yeah, Abdurrahman Muhammad. I think he's from DC, the Howard graduate. I would love to have a real conversation with you. And it don't have to be the other two imams, because people think we're jumping on people. Nah, serious. And he had a beautiful talk yesterday. I thought was, as I don't really follow him, but since he's always trolling me, and then when I have one of this conversation he runs, I listened to him. He had a beautiful talk about the condition of black people from a Howard graduate, right? And what it used to be. So we can talk about issues of the deen that may not be your strong point, but we also can talk about black people, and that may be your strong point. So in any case, we would love to have you and talk about these issues on the Black Imams Roundtable. That's an open invitation to you, and I promise we will be as nice as we can. But you can't be like soft skin. We black, man. We can mix it up a little bit. You can take it. It's okay. We're men. We can take it.
He ain't got soft skin. He asked for your number and I gave it to him.
He ain't called me once. And he just did a soft skin on me and said, I'm out of here. I'm like, come on, I love you, bro. Let's kick it.
You did tell him to go get some rest, so he might be still.
Yeah, because you ain't serious. You're just talking. Every time we say have a talk, you run.
Yeah.
You're not as one of those, I got an idea, but I don't want my idea challenged. Right? If you got an idea, your idea can be challenged. And it's okay. If someone prove you wrong, fix yourself. That's it. Listen, if we having a discussion and our ideas are wrong, we should correct them. We should want to know that our ideas are mistaken and we should fix them. We shouldn't run from a discussion. So since I got it all out, I'm sorry to take over that, but I really be wanting to respond, but I can't. I had to put my car in neutral sometimes and even reverse. But one Lebanese leader told me, he said, my car don't go in reverse. I said to him, mine don't either, right? All right, go ahead. So yeah, Imam Faheem, yeah. That was a long yes.
Okay, yeah, alhamdulillah. So you're in
a real long yes.
Yeah, because I'm holding back. I really want to fire some. I want to return fire, but I can't.
In the words of the elder George Bush, a kinder, gentler Ashery. Yeah. So okay. So with that being said, yeah, inshallah, because there's a lot of stuff to unpack, and I think with the book, although it was good, it was you had to be kind of into it. I mean, it wasn't like if I wasn't interested in what he was saying, it wouldn't be a read that I would normally read, but alhamdulillah, it's packed with a lot of information, a lot of stuff to unpack. And so the pros and cons of it, but and following up with Imam Amin, what he said, to really, those videos that we're reviewing, I'm going to go back and review those because I think they have a lot of more things that really could be, analyzed better, inshallah ta'ala, and I haven't finished the book, but I will be finished by next week to give it its proper analytical, kind of thing. And so I'll stop there and I'll turn it over to Imam Naeem, inshallah.
If I can just add, Imam Faheem, I'm reading the book, and I'm in a dilemma with this because I think that we need to read stuff we're affected by, right? The Wahhabi Salafi movement has caused so much stress in our communities, still to this day. So his book, when you know what he's talking about, I think this book going to go down as one of the best books written. And as he said, it's going to be food for other books or fuel for other books to be written, right? Because he got mistakes, of course. And someone is going to come and answer those mistakes. And what eventually is going to come out is we're going to have a discussion that other people are running from, right? Like through his writings, he's going to put a discussion that needs to be had on paper, and many people are going to do this. And the academics, they're going to answer. So, and I think anyone who's concerned about the future of Islam in the West altogether, this is a must read if you really want to understand. And I'm going beyond blind following and all that stuff. I'm talking about, listen, critical thinking and be honest. But I think the problem is because it's an academic work and many of our audiences that we engage are not academics. So it may make it difficult. That's why we need a critical analysis of the book by people who can bring it and convey what he's trying to say in a language that everybody can understand, right? So, You know, we don't like names, we don't like dates, we don't like history. So we got to break that stuff down so it's, you know, so that we can absorb it, because it's crucial for our understand. And I would like to ask Brother Levon. Brother Levon, did you read Yasser Cardi's book? I know you probably did. So I would like you to come on and join us and give your insight. I ain't coming nowhere near that round table. I'm joking. Brother Levon, man, come join us, Habibi. We'll give you the link. Let me put the link up. I would love to hear your input. I'm busy, Imam. So you have it. Come on and discuss with us. We brothers. Where is it at? Let me invite you. Where's the link? There you go, Brother Levine. Come join us, Brother Levine. You be teaching, giving up that Maliki knowledge. I would like to hear your points. Levine Turner, we not talking to you. We talking to the Sheikh Levine, not the student. Right now, joking. Go ahead, Imam. You know me, I got to have fun.
You see how Sister Malika put it on blast? He ain't read it.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa afdalu salat wa atamu taslim ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'da. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Great, Imam. We got Brother Levine with us too.
Alhamdulillah. Welcome, welcome. Alhamdulillah. Allahu Akbar. I won't be long. I want to speak on something I observed as it relates to this topic. For many of us, when they hear the term or the label Wahhabi, they don't actually know what a Wahhabi is. Even many of our people, when I say people that agree with us, if you ask many of them to define a Wahhabi, you get a variation of meanings or definitions. Even myself, for a long period of time, if you would have asked me what a Wahhabi or a Salafi is, I may have said something like, you know, people who have bad character, they make you wear your pants above your ankles, they make their women wear black. Or I may have said something like that. But it wasn't until maybe a decade after they exploded onto the scene that I really understood what a Wahhabi is or was. And it was then that I realized that a Wahhabi relates to a set of beliefs. Netflix documentary, The Black Imam's Roundtable, Reclaiming the Narrative. I like that. Sister Anissa said, we still on Wahhabis? Yes, we still on Wahhabis. Because they still here. They're still infesting and infecting our communities. So, yeah, we still here. Alhamdulillah. So, many of us, we're all over the place with what we think a Wahhabi is. And we don't actually know. And even before they exploded on the scene in the mid to late 1990s, they were already there. Our community was subtly being infused with their beliefs well before that. And I'm not going to talk about that now, but I'm just saying all of that to say that their ideas, their creedal positions are pervasive in our communities. A lot of times we're looking for the loud, dogmatic, outlandish point being made, but it's also, they laid a subtle foundation way before the 1990s in America. And so with all of that, I'm saying that just like the Shahada, the Shahada, when we say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, you have a negation and then an affirmation. La ilaha, right? There is no God. That's the negation. Illallah, except Allah. That's the affirmation. So when you even are bearing witness to Allah and His oneness, etc., that involves a negation, a clearing of the board, and then the affirmation or the acceptance. I'm going to give you a parable. I like to give real life examples. I'm an electrician, so a lot of times I think in terms of giving electrical examples. You can find examples in other trades. One thing that a lot of people in the field are not good with is troubleshooting. Someone calls you to their house and they want you to troubleshoot why this isn't working, why that isn't working. Or someone calls you to their house and they say, hey, I want you to rewire this thing, but I don't want you to take out all of the electricity. I just want you to rewire this part. That involves a level and a skill of troubleshooting. When you're dealing with old houses, I'm talking about electrical work, just bear with me. I'm just trying to give you an example. When you're dealing with old houses, like literally the refrigerator in the kitchen, the light in the front porch, one outlet in the bedroom upstairs, and then the washing machine could be all on the same circuit, right? All over the place. Because in old houses, people come, they do work, and they need a new outlet over here. They just find some electricity, run a line and plug it in. So by the time a real electrician comes and he has to deal with that circuit, if he just disconnects it, you're going to have holes all over the place. That outlet upstairs ain't working. That outlet in the basement ain't working. That light in the porch ain't working. The refrigerator ain't working. It's all over the place. So a good electrician has to troubleshoot what all is on that circuit. And do I have everything, right? And so with that being said, with that example, right, when it comes to this thing called the Islamic belief, Aqidah, Ilmu Tawheed, what we have to do is we have to learn accepted books by Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'at. Probably the most famous of those books is Aqidah of Imam at-Tahawi. And we have to learn those books with a qualified teacher who will explain it and give commentary on those books and make it relevant for the time and place that we're living. How will he do that? In the same way that electrician is going to see everything that's on that circuit, when he's going through the different points of creed, when he gets to a point in those books that conflicts with the popular belief that Muslims have now, he's going to stop and he's going to digress. You see, Imam Tahawi said right here, such and so. This is different from what many of us believe. And we have to highlight the differences because these bad beliefs with regards to our creed, they're pervasive now. They're being seen as normal standard Islamic beliefs when they're not. So you need that teacher to not just to teach the book, okay, I got an ijaz in the book. No. We need more than that. We need, when you're going through the book, okay, you stop on point right here and you say, listen, this is not what is being said by the majority of Muslims in our group. in our cities. They say X, Y, and Z. And the proof that this point is wrong is, and you digress on that one point. And those other points that we don't necessarily have a problem with, we can just go over the book. We need people to teach us books like that. We need people to teach us books like that. So because one of the things that Dr. Yasir Qadhi said, he said, I'm not quoting him, he basically relegated negating the similarity of Allah's attributes to his creation. He relegated that to kalam. That's kalam. You going into detail explaining why Allah doesn't resemble his creation, these attributes, that's kalam. So it's points like that that we have to explain and elucidate when we teach these books. I'm preaching to the choir here, people that already agree with us. And I said all of that to say that when we learn like this, number one, because when we have conversations like this, most of us, we get stuck on the contemporary names that are being mentioned. We make it about the person, not about the issue. And the reason why it's like that is because of what Imam Amin said earlier, because we don't understand the issue. So we have to learn the issue. But we know we're familiar with the individual, so we just latch onto the person. And when we talk about the issue that the person expressed, we really sound to a lot of people like, Charlie Brown, Peanuts, whenever the adult spoke, he said, that's how we sound to a lot of people when we talk about the issue. We say, Yasir Qadhi, Sheikh Uthaymeen, they don't hear nothing else between that. They just hear the names. Because they're not taking time to learn the issue and why the issue is of primary importance and not of secondary importance. So this is why it's important that we learn that way. I repeat, from acceptable Ahlul Sunnah books with qualified teachers who's going to digress and explain and elucidate those points that contradict what is popularly being passed off as proper creed nowadays. And in conclusion, I say that to say, that we come to you all and teach you in your city if you organize it. And we have came and taught in other cities the Aqidah of Imam Tahawi. And a lot of people come on, they say, when you're going to come to our city? I'll answer that question with a question. When you going to organize it? I mean, you just want us to pull up? You invited us to your city. We just pull up. You just don't organize or nothing. You just said in a comment, when you going to come to my city? All right, we coming. Right, we just going to pull up. Where we going to have the program at? Where we going to teach at? Are you going to organize anything? Are you going to put in any work? Right? So I just wanted to say all of that. And I hope what I said was understood, because it's not like we need to throw out the baby with the bathwater, but just like going back to the electrical situation, right? If you don't do it that way, sometimes you can leave a live wire inside the wall and you can really start a fire if you don't trace every one of those lines. And just like our creed, right? You think all is all the same, it's just kalam, it's just word semantics, right? You leave that thing there uncorrected, and it could lead you to something real bad with regards to Allah, making Allah like his creation. It could lead to you negating the very thing that you affirmed. Well, alhamdulillah.
Hey,
I'm done.
I just had one of those moments where you see it, like I've seen this before, this setting. You ever get those? You're like, wow, this is so familiar, right? That's my Sufi stuff, I guess, right? Brother Levan, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So why don't you quickly introduce yourself? They're like, who's this guy? Why do you want him on?
With the Lakers hat on.
So if you could just give what's your activity, just quickly, big yourself up a little bit so they know why I invited you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala Sayyidina wa Maulana Muhammadin Rasulullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wasallam. Assalamu alaikum. I'm nobody. I'm just a teacher, really a student that was forced to teach, was pushed up to teach in the central New Jersey area. I'm the assistant imam for the Islamic Center of Ewing in Ewing, New Jersey, and I'm one of the teachers and volunteer imams at the Muslim Center of Greater Princeton. So, yeah. Besides that, I'm just a student. I'm trying to learn like everybody else. So, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me on. I'm actually humbled and honored to be on this platform. Thank you.
So good question. Did you read the entire book?
No, I'm busy.
In the first chapter.
I read portions of the first chapter. I kind of like skimmed through the book and read certain things that I was interested in. Like I referenced like certain portions that I was particularly interested in, particularly regarding the history of Ibn Taymiyyah. And then I wanted to see what Yasir Qadhi was referencing, as he said in an interview that he was trying to trace Salafi-ism from the Salaf till now. So I was trying to figure out, well, how do you do that? Or are you just speaking about what Salafis believe their trace is? Like I really was a little perplexed with that. Like the Salaf didn't call themselves Salafis. So is it a name? Is it a meaning? What are you actually talking about? So that's something I wanted to trace. I also wanted to know, and I think it was something that was wanting in the book when he mentioned, I wanted to know, well, who were the opponents of Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, in his lifetime? Not just from amongst the people that were not from the Hanabila in creed, but from the Hanabila in creed. Like, who were these people? Because I think that in our context, when we learn about, and I'm totally off topic to what you asked for, my apologies.
For this Black Imams Roundtable, we always off topic. Go for it.
But I was just thinking to myself, he mentioned in the text when going over Ibn Taymiyyah that this is on page 69. Yeah, he mentioned that there were some Hanbalis that opposed some of his positions in creed, and in doing my own studies in history, we never speak about, well, who were the Hanbalis that opposed him, right? If Ibn Taymiyyah is the linchpin to Salafism, and he's the lens by which the modern Salafi movement in all of its facets see the Salaf, but everything that he did was so unique. Well, who was he getting this information? Where's his Senate coming from? And if we say that he's not on it, right? If we say that he had aberrant positions, well, who had the right positions? So I'm trying to see exactly, that's something that was missing in the book that I was looking for. So look at certain things.
Let me ask you the first question from what you said, because these are areas, and I want you to feel free, just, to have the conversation, because it's important from our point of view, is when we're talking, especially us as African Americans who are in the inner cities, who serve in our communities, that has been dominated by this Salafi movement, as Yasir Qadhi said, with its strands. But for us, we've received the most extreme strand of Salafism, or Salafiyya. I don't like these academic terms. Da'wah to Salafiyya. And here's the thing, many of us, because we don't do an academic approach to things, we just hear terms and names, right? So we don't know what's really happening. So we hear so-and-so got kicked off the minhaj, or so-and-so's on the list. We never even asked who made that list, and who's the authority by which that list, under whose authority was that list made? Who is the one supervising who's on, who's off? these are very pertinent questions that relate to the impact on the ground, right?
Yeah.
Who's the one said this guy no longer is Salafi? This one, but the guy who's said you're no longer Salafi, to him he's a Salafi. And then what I like to say, and I'm making it long so you can get what I'm trying to say. The guys that's kicked off the minhaj was at one time the ones kicking people off the minhaj until that person said you off the minhaj.
Right.
Now, when you follow everything, you'll start to realize that this boils down to a handful of individuals that are Saudis, that have a certain position. And what was that position? Yasser Qadhi knows all that. But because he's still Salafi, even if he's not Wahhabi or he's Taimi, he's not whatever you want to call himself now, he still has an attachment to the people that gave him that understanding.
Absolutely.
So what is Salafiyya according to your understanding? And from your own research and from reading, what is Salafiyya?
From my research and from my understanding, Salafiyya is just another term, is the new term for Wahhabiyya.
Oh, you agree with us?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. No. It's Wahhabism. But like he mentions in the book that Wahhabism, that movement, every strand, every notion of Salafism that we see today can be traced back to Muhammad Abdul Wahhab, and in my opinion, and Allah knows best. How people, what people have added to it, or like you said, I think you mentioned it last week, to the degree by which that they've taken from it may differ, and that's what creates the strands, right? Like you mentioned Muhammad Abdul, right? Some people may find a link between some of his teachers who really came from Saudi and then were exiled to Egypt to be that linchpin to him and Muhammad Abdul Wahhab in that thought, right? In that political thought. That's to be researched, right? The words, like he said, the word Salafism is something that was coined by Muhammad Abdul, I think, or Rashid Rida, right? So, but the concepts behind it are still being, they're evoking very similar concepts, and they find kinship with the Wahhabis, right? You could somewhat say the same thing. I was reading a book, another academic book on Wahhabism, in which during the lifetime of Muhammad Abdul Wahhab, they said the same thing about Imam Shawkani, right? Imam Shawkani coming from a Zaydi background, and then studying Hadith. Initially, he also found kinship with the movement of Wahhabiyya, but when they started killing people, he stepped to the side, right? Like, that's not a part of what we, you can also say the same thing about Ahmed ibn Idris, right? Al-Fasi, great Sufi scholar, right? Who eventually settled in Yemen, where the Salafis or the Wahhabis at the time, they appreciated his type of tasawwuf, or they appreciated some of his stances, particularly when it came to the madhabs, right? Being so harsh at the time. So they didn't really bother him as much, right? But kinship does not necessarily entail strand or strain, right? So there has to be some type of, again, like you're saying, who's defining what's kinship, what's strain, and where people just have agreements, So it's an interesting study.
From your reading and of what you read and from listening to videos, because see, I mean, from the side of the book, I'm reading it very critically. And I read it as he said it should be read. Read the first chapter, the introduction, you'll get a bird's eye view, an overview. Then I went to examine certain things that are relevant to what we're talking about. Because when we think of Salafi, we only think of a certain movement within da'wah to Salafiyya. For us, it is attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, madhahib, not following the madhab, tawassul, tabarruk, bid'ah. That's our discussion in our communities. Jihadi, political, all that stuff has nothing to do with black folks. So we're not interested in that. That's the kids on college campuses in the suburbs. They got to worry about that. For black people, we ain't doing none of that, right? Unless one just signed up for something.
Right.
So that's why the Salafi, quote unquote, I don't like that term. I like Wahhabi, right? But the ones we deal with are actually the worst academically, not politically, not revolutionary, academically, theological. That's the problem with them. They're not interested in nothing else. They're broke, poor, and no political influence. They don't even have real influence in this. The Saudis ain't giving them no money. You Negroes can go fly a kite. Just go spread our stuff. That's it. And I just, that's just being real. But Yasir Qadhi comes from the higher level of academics. He has a political base with them because they can use him because he's of a fair skin, right? So that's why they promoted him, videos all over the world. How many other graduates we got in America that graduated, but they don't fit the bill? So when I'm asking you that, on the ground, how do you define Salafiyya? So you gave me a broad picture. Now on the ground in the black community, how you define Salafiyya? Because it takes a different look.
Yeah, I would define it similar to how you define it, right? You have our people, and may Allah bless our people, they are the believers. And whatever they join and whatever they receive of knowledge, they take it on wholeheartedly. So they don't necessarily, we have to get to a point where we can compare and contrast, like really do research and not just take things for face value. It's like that Benny King song, right? I'm a guy who believes just what he hears, right? That's us, right? If it touches our soul, we kind of take onto it and latch onto it, and it helps us get to a particular place. But is it exactly what we think it is? Not necessarily. And then when we realize that, that's when anger and frustration comes, right? When we go, this is not real. Like, I'm an 85. I was born in 1985. So I'm a young head to all of y'all. Like, I'm really young, 40, right? But I remember in the 90s when people were questioning how many daughters the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had in Brooklyn, right? Like, that was the thing, right? They didn't know. You know what I mean? Like, was it just Fatima, or was it the other three? Were they stepchildren? What was it? This was a thing, right? And that was a part of the dawah to Salafiyya as well, like questioning everything, right? What are we actually looking at? And you have to have access. You have to have access. You have to have knowledge. You have to have knowledge of the Arabic language. You have to have teachers. Just everything that you guys are saying. May Allah bless you. Sorry for calling you guys, but
guys,
it's everything that you guys are saying. It's just that we don't have that. We get the sloganeering. We get the campaign call. When it's time we get the campaign call. And we are for it because we believe. We really believe. You know what I'm saying? And you can't knock a person for believing. It's just that hey man, look behind the curtain. You got to pull somebody's coattail. And there are a lot of people who got caught up in riding for the cause, and they got their coattail pulled because they got pulled into something that they didn't want to get pulled into. You guys like to call it the university, right? And then they switched up because then they knew, oh, wait a minute, I was being used the whole time. You know what I'm saying? So, it's a thing. But and then also when you begin to study a little bit, a lot of those things get, you start to say, okay, I see where they're coming from. I see where this comes from, but this is not what everybody is on, right? If you study the basic work of fiqh, if you, especially in the Maliki school, then you know there's a clear difference of opinion with the Murshid al-Mu'in as opposed to Usul al-Thalatha. You know, sometimes you won't even be able to understand what an Ash'ari is saying with our context on the ground, with being Salafi oriented or Wahhabi oriented. Just looking at a work like the Murshid with the Aqidah section in it, or al-Barahim, we wouldn't even understand it. What do you mean what's necessary? Everything. What do you mean what's impossible for Allah? Nothing's impossible for Allah. We don't even understand that that's technical terms. Right? So it's like that access, the language, the whole bit, the appealing part of Salafiyya as we see it really is it's in our language. It's clear, right? Whereas we need people like yourselves to break down, to like speak to people in a language that they can understand when it comes to the Aqidah of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the Ash'aris and the Maturidis, and explain that without also going into this like big diatribe of, and this one's off of it, and these deviants, and da. Just teach us the deen. just teach us what we need to know so we can believe properly, right? But that becomes a big problem. That becomes a big problem within our communities. So we become a community of believers who are stuck on argumentation and not even on evidences anymore. And especially not education, just argumentation. And that's something that spread to us, and it's entertainment. We see it in our music, we see it in what we watch, and now with the edutainment that's on the YouTube, not you guys, right? Because you actually teach, right? But there are others that, you know, they don't teach. This is what they do, right? They just argumentation. You know, and it's not just the Muslims, it's the Christians, right? Where you have all these different segments on the internet that are literally arguing against Muslims, right? So Yasir Qadhi makes a statement about speaking to different demographics of hadith criticism. You know, if he speaks to an audience, an academic audience, he's not going to use he's not going to speak about hadith as if in the same sense that he would speak to a Muslim, because they use the historical critical method. They're not going to believe in it anyway. He has to speak to them in a language they can understand. And then you have people that's like, he just destroyed the hadith, the hadith methodology. He didn't. He just said, I switch up my language based upon who I'm talking to. Right? It's interesting.
So where do you say from your reading and from your listening where Yasir Qadhi's at? That's my last question.
Where he's at?
Now.
He's a Salafi.
What type of Salafi?
He's never been a Madkhali. So the Madkhali is the strain that we deal with.
What's the Madkhali?
The Madkhalis are the students of, in terms, right? The students of Sheikh Rabi'a al-Madkhali, right? Like, he just passed away, right? May Allah have mercy on him and forgive him his sins. And I say that, but he's a Muslim, right? He's, you know, from a standpoint, he was born into that too, to a certain extent. But you know, that's what we received. We received this hardcore, you know, it has to be this way. What one scholar called, I'm not going to say it because that may seem pejorative. But
wait, this roundtable, we don't pull no punches. Whoa.
Yeah, what is pejorative? Let me get my dictionary.
It may seem like a slur, and I don't want nobody making a video about me.
That's why I brought you on, so you can get a video made about you, and we don't gotta be alone.
Man, that comes with the territory.
Some people call that particular type of strand like this is the orientation of Bedouins. Very harsh, very hard, right? Very harsh and very hard. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, whereas that's not the methodology, and that's not the way that Yasir Qadhi came up in. From his own admission, from his own statements, how he came up in Salafiyya, right? He's one of the first persons to actually translate Usul al-Thalatha in English. He's the top of the class when he goes to the University of Medina. when he comes out, he's a part of a group that establishes, Al-Maghrib Institute, which is really traveling scholars. At one time, if I remember correctly, all of the teachers of of Al-Maghrib were Medina Institute graduates, and they wouldn't, similarly what you're telling, and your audience should think about this. The way Al-Maghrib is structured, wherever they go, there are students who organize where the platform is going to be, who's going to teach, and they bring them out, and they do that consistently to the point where it becomes like it's an organization. It's a beautiful system of students coming to learn. So people should think about that. But this is not the same strand that we're dealing with. He's an actual academic. He's actually reading the books. He's actually teaching the books. He's translating the books. He's an actual student of knowledge, right? And the communities that he goes back to, they're already set. They're assimilating to American culture, but they're not trying to establish themselves. They're established. That was done already. Whereas our communities, we have a totally different context in America, right? That he doesn't have to deal with, right? So he's right. The strand of Salafism that he comes from is totally different from what we see contemporarily. And I would venture to say, I don't know if anybody can disagree with the fact with what he was saying regarding from a timeline perspective, that there is an evolution of Wahhabiyya/Salafiyya in how they treat people who are not on their movement. Yes. Right? I think that's correct. I mean, so if from that standpoint, there are waves, all of these terms, right? Waves and different types of strands, different orientations that some people are more affiliated with. But as far as now, I think that within time, people this is gonna get around. But I think within time.
Yeah, no, listen. You came on. I gave you an out. So you came on. No getting away. Right? You joined the refutation and kicked off the minhaj.
I think within time, what I've learned about Salafiyya, and you guys have been around longer than me, that I think that the movement has its own program by which it's like the military. They break you down, they break down your cognitive frame of what you're thinking, and then they build it up. Eventually, with sincerity, all of the things that they don't have, they're eventually going to get, right? And I think that we're seeing that actively in a person like Yasir Qadhi. He hasn't, like you said, he hasn't necessarily divorced himself from the theology that he's been teaching, but he's actively learning and he's tracing it. He's doing that active work of tracing it back. So like in one of the statements he made, he said, well, he was on Ibn Taymiyyah and now he's studying Ibn Qudama. Ibn Qudama and Ibn Taymiyyah are two different people. They're two different scholars. What Ibn Qudama accepted, any Salafi would say Ibn Taymiyyah would never accept that, right? Because the nuanced version of what Ibn Taymiyyah is saying, is particularly when it comes to tasawwuf, is that some of the things that Ibn Qudama would accept as like tabarruk and tawassul and istighatha, he would go, no, that's shirk, right? Or
for that, Akhi, that Ibn Qudama accept istighatha?
Whether he accepted istighatha, I would say the particular explicit dalil, no, but I know that he's a student of Abdul Qadir al-Jilani. I know that.
So you're making an analogy based on his sheikh, and the assumption that possibly his sheikh, he had an inclination to that.
I would say it's a possibility, and I think that it's been stated within the book here, Understanding Salafism, and other works regarding Ibn Qudama, that he had an inclination towards mainstream Salafism in its fullness.
Mainstream Salafism?
Mainstream tasawwuf in its fullness, right? And some would even venture to say the same thing.
They're going to ask for a dalil for that.
Tell them to read Wikipedia.
So, at best, your evidence is dhanni, not qat'i.
No, it's funny. I don't know the man, but
I'm having fun. Don't worry.
But
It's
and
part
some
of the
people,
Imam's Roundtable edutainment. Right?
mashallah. And some people would actually say the same thing about Ibn Taymiyyah, because Ibn Taymiyyah is one of Ibn Taymiyyah's teachers, particularly in Tasawwuf, is what, the nephew of Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi. So like, it's not that he doesn't have a chain. He's buried in the Qadri cemetery in Damascus, right? So like, no, he's there, right? He's involved. The lens that we see of Ibn Taymiyyah is from the Wahhabi side, and even in the lifetime of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, the other Hanbalis, i.e. Sulaiman ibn Abdul Wahhab, is like, you're going too far. Like, the people who you may be speaking about from a contextual basis may be going too far in their practice. You may be right about that. But what you're saying about them, you're going too far. What you're doing to them, you're going too far. And the people that he allegedly studied with in Iraq and the people in Medina, they also said he's going too far. And he's using Ibn Taymiyyah as a springboard for these ideas. But even Ibn Taymiyyah's ideas, they weren't accepted. And this is around full circle. This is the issue that I'm having, is that in this book, who are the interlocutors who are Hanbali that are saying, Ibn Taymiyyah, you're going too far, right? How come that's not being addressed? Because you're not giving your students and you're not giving other Salafis a chance to go research who are the contemporary Hanbalis, the muftis of the Hanbalis during the lifetime of Ibn Taymiyyah, that may have said, no, I don't think you were right on that, right? That's again, you cutting off that access, right? You're cutting off that access, right? And if you say, and if you're looking at it from a Salafi perspective, okay, if you're looking at it from a Salafi perspective that this is what the Salaf was on, okay, so why didn't all of the Hanbalis agree that this is what the Salafis were on? If Ibn Taymiyyah, and you actually say that Ibn Taymiyyah is unique in this idea, okay, so who are the people that were against him? Not from the Shafis, not from the Malikis, not from the Hanafis, not from the Ash'aris, not from the Maturidis, fiqh and Aqidah, but from the Hanbalis themselves, right? Who was against your opinion? Who were they, and what is their Senate back to the Salaf? That's academic. That's intellectually honest. And that's always wanting with the discourse that we have regarding Ibn Taymiyyah and the Salafis and the Wahhabis.
I'm going to go pray real quick. I know you do too, but if the Imam want a question, I'll be right back in about 5-10 minutes.
What our brother LeBron just said, I like that. I like it. Because it's showing true scholarly integrity. You know, okay, who are these guys? Don't just mention them. Don't try to skate past it. Who are these guys? Because they do exist. Right. You know, that's not my strong point, but it was a Hanbali scholar that signed the fatwa to imprison him as well, right? It was scholars from all four madhahib that were the judges from all four madhahibs who ruled to imprison him. And I think that if that question is not answered academically, it just really is just a remixing of the Wahhabi narratives. All the other scholars were jealous of him, that's why they put him in jail.
Exactly. And I don't think that it works for somebody who's new, but if you're a student of knowledge, then you want to know, okay, well, what was his actual, if you're a student of law, like we study fiqh, right? We study hadith, what was your actual issue, right? What was the issue? And let's see, what was your proofs and what was your dalil? If we are people that are looking for dalil, go back into that court case and find out what happened. We have the records, right? We have the records. What was the actual issue, right? And if it was just jealousy, I'm sure that's not in the records, right? There was a reason. And some judge said, that's a good reason, right? Right. Some judge said that was a good reason. He is doing that, and that's not right. And I'm not saying that the judge was right. I wasn't there. I don't know the context. But what was it? We have to go into detail. Allah knows best. And really, like you always say, right? There are people that should go into detail. The problem is that in our communities and in this age, these conversations are taking up time in people's lives that it shouldn't be taken up. There are certain people that should be worried about that should be discussing that, but the rest of us should be focusing on worshiping Allah. Why are we even talking about, may Allah bless Ibn Taymiyyah, may Allah have mercy on him? Right? Let's move. Like, y'all figure it out and let me know what's going on after I finish praying Maghrib. But I don't have time for this stuff, and then allow people to use their common sense and to look at it for themselves. There should be no reason why you should hide such a thing. So.
I think that's a point of Yasser Qadhi, right? But I don't agree with that at all. And I'll tell you why I don't agree with it. In theory, it's a great idea. But on the practical level, it's inapplicable. Why? Because the people are talking about it. And it's like the Wahhabiyya, so-called Salafiyya, have made an oil spill. And after making the oil spill, polluting the waters, killing off all the fish, they tell us, oh, why we got to clean this up. The water is dirty, just leave it and say, Rahimahullah on the ones who spilled the oil. La, right? You got to clean that up, right? If someone gave you that and said, listen, the spill was made, no matter how it was made, no matter who was harmed, no matter the lasting effects, let's just move on. And let the chemists and the engineers deal with that. While we dying is in our water. Would you accept? Absolutely not. Mm-mm. So if that's dunya, what is our akhirah worth? It's worth the discussion. Listen, if we having this discussion now, and Yasser Qadhi says, okay, let's get some scholars, and I know those scholars that they call scholars, who are not scholars, straight up. They are not scholars. By any definition of scholarship, you could tell that stuff to somebody else who never sat with scholars. I'm having a real talk. I didn't say they wasn't learned. I didn't say they wasn't knowledgeable. But the claim they giving themselves, it don't fit. Like he says, I'm an expert. I graduated from the University of Medina. Aqidah is my skill set. I'm an expert. Bro, you making elementary mistakes in Aqidah, right? Even with your PhD. I don't know what you're talking about, right? Basic ABC stuff you making mistakes in Aqidah. So if you're going to have that discussion with the likes of you, I don't know, that's going to be Islamic perennialism at best. It's not going to solve the problem, and it's not going to change what we're dealing with on the ground. Because while those suburban intellectual academics is in the room, because they ain't bringing us, they bringing their people, the likes, and the likes of these matters, as our people say, right? So that discussion is going to be in the local masjid in our inner cities, talking about we deviants and grave worshippers, and we worship the awliya and blah, blah, blah. We deny Allah's attributes, and they having that discussion, right? Like just, what's this? Today's Tuesday? Saturday night, they had this discussion in their masjids, in the projects, about what we're talking about. So that discussion is going on. They just ain't having it with us. And they picking people off. It's like assassins. They're going in our neighborhood and just picking people off while we remain silent talking about Rahimahullah, right? And not having discussion while they at war. And they're getting marching orders from Saudi Arabia to come back to our neighborhoods and wage war on our people. And we're sitting here talking about, and that's a fact. Any graduate in Medina who's going outside and sitting in the circles of Rabi' and Madkhali and the likes, they coming back to wage war. And I mean wage war, a theological war, a juristic war. they're coming back with that. So I think that's something we should challenge. If you follow what I mean. I know you got to go pray, Imam Naeem. You follow my point with that?
Yes, I do, inshallah. Sorry, my daughter was knocking on the door. I do have to go mix a lot up. But yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I think that there needs to be, at a level, there should be discussion, right? I think that we have to figure out how to have those discussions with people, with the right people within the community. But I think one of the things that, and it's something I don't like to talk about this stuff online, but I think one of the things that we can learn from Yasir Qadhi is that, you know, he mentions this about the Ash'ari, and he mentions this about this being a criticism of Salafi Dawah in America, that is basically Saudi run, it's Saudi money, it's oil money, right? And then he says the same thing about the Ash'ari being okay, but this was really a project of Nizam al-Mulk, right? And that's the reason why the Ash'ari spread. This is so,
but that's not intellectually or academically correct at all, because that's the assumption that the Ash'ari, right, were all in Naysabur,
and they were
areas behind the river. But Al-Sunnah, if you study our Asanid and the Ash'ari, you'll find them in every time and place from the time of Imam Ash'ari and Imam Maturidi and the scholars of Al-Sunnah before Imam Al-Ash'ari made his change from Al-I'tizal. So that doesn't hold up historically or globally. That holds no weight.
No, it doesn't.
It's the assumption that in the 6th century, or the late 5th century, when you're going to have Imam al-Haramain and that spread of the Nizamiyya in Naysabur and Iraq, that prior to that, there were no scholars of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah on the methodology of Imam al-Ash'ari, right? And on the methodology of Imam Ahmed, who were not Hanbalis. And that's, see, that false thing to say, okay, well, Imam Ahmed was Hanbali, and it was Imam Ahmed never called himself a Hanbali, right? So that's students. Well, there were students of Imam Ahmed who followed his way and his approaches to Aqidah that were Shafi, that were Maliki, when you're talking about his usul of approach.
Exactly.
Which are the Ash'ari have that approach. So that assumption that doesn't hold weight. In a real academic conversation, that don't hold no weight. It doesn't fit at all. For someone who knows history, for someone who knows chains of narration, that don't hold up.
I agree with you. I don't disagree with you. I agree with you totally. But I think that what we can benefit from such a statement is a method of how to continue to educate our people, is to have that discussion with people, but have another focus where we focus on establishing the needs of our people, us establishing the needs and the resources of our people, instead of solely just focusing on this particular group within our community. Like, because when you feeding people, they don't really care what Aqidah you follow, right? You know, and that's what I was trying to grasp from what he said. There is a methodology of, as my father used to say, I show you better than I can tell you, right? You can discuss this stuff all you want, and you should, but the people are going to go with who feeds them. And we should be feeding the people educationally, but also we should be providing resources to the people. And imagine, and maybe this is just me and my naivety and in my kumbaya phase, right?
Oh, wait a minute. You just said it. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm going to highlight that point, at least to be honest and recognize what's happening here.
Yeah, listen, I would like to see, there's no reason, particularly in our context in America, for us to be divided upon these things, right? It's really it's not neither here nor there. Like you said, it has to do with the akhirah. I'm not saying it's neither here nor there, but we got to have a bit more maturity than what we have on this topic, right? The way that we're being conditioned, it's juvenile at best, and it's something that we should be able to overcome. We're dealing with too much, you know. But I think that with time, I just think about imagine if you get the resources from the people that you say are deviants, right? And I think we see that already, right? Where it's like, okay, you're a deviant, I'm a deviant, but you preach at my masjid, right? I'm the deviant, right? The deviant is the masjid, he has the deed for the masjid, right? And I think we've seen that before. I'm the deviant, but you shop at my grocery store. And when you shop at my grocery store, I don't tell you can't stop at my grocery store because you're not Ash'ari. No, you're a Muslim. La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah, right? And you don't need that to shop at my grocery store. This is America, right? Eventually, those type of feelings that imposed hatred, that imposed resentment that people have learned against each other on the basis of like these fine points in Aqidah and things like that, or these points in Aqidah, is gonna go away. Because you're like, I know I love my brother. You know, when I didn't have no sugar, I didn't have to go. He knocked on the door and said, "You ain't got no sugar, right? Here, take that sugar. But you can have mine." Right?
I wish Imam Faheem was here. He'd tell you that don't work. And I could tell you the same thing. I don't know if Imam Naeem could, because we've been in we in hardcore environments. You could do whatever you want. At the end of the day, listen, I give you in my city, there is nothing but love between us. If we talk about personal, people to people, that's a good brother, but he's a deviant. And that ain't coming from them. That's coming from the Saudis and then the African Americans who were trained and by the Saudis to come do that. Right? The average guy, it can't have this discussion you're talking about. The average Salafi cannot have this discussion at all. I'll give you one we'll talk about to just give you an example. He used to come to Imam Faheem's masjid, and he was welcome. But he would be there talking about somebody being a deviant. And he was pushing ideas, and his name was a contradiction to everything he was talking about. And one day I brought it to him. I'm like, you got a name, right, that represents a thought opposite of what you're talking about. That's the name of your platform. And I opened up the books and say, look, this is what that name you said, this is what he said. It contradicts what you say. But you're using his name to spread. You can't feed somebody out of that stuff. You have to educate them.
Yeah.
Right? So in our communities, the average guy, like I made a joke yesterday. I don't want to put the brother on the internet, but he got out of prison. He hanging out with the Wahhabi Salafi guys, and he was talking about Sheikh Rabia al-Madkhali and his death, and it was just a mess. Even the pronunciation of his name, right? It's just blind following. It's not anything academic at all. So even if you feed that brother, even if you do the janazah when they don't do janazahs, at the end of the day, when he go back to that camp, they're going to feed him the same foolishness that caused him to be like that, no matter how good you've been to him. That's just, I can tell you from Atlantic City, you can tell from Philly, you can tell in Camden, New York. If you go what we deal with, you have to take that snake by the head. You can't avoid it. And what happens is we go to other communities who don't have our dynamics and try to like impose that on our reality. Like if I go to places, as you know, the circles I am, they're totally different environments. They don't have the education level there is at least a bachelor's, right? If masters, they're professional people. This is the hood, right? Where we predominantly live, right? And we got the worst strand. And I don't think we would be delusional to say it in the softest way I can, to believe we're just going to Rodney King our way out of this without real hardcore confrontation and education. We ain't saying that got to be a fight, but we got to have real discussions. And we got to clean up the oil spill. We can't run from that. And here's my question. Where is our side of real academic approach, real understanding, real learning from Black people? That's the challenge. Because the way most of us learn, we learn like slaves. So when we could have the knowledge, but the first thing we say is, I don't want no conflict. Wait a minute, that's your job. You the learned one. We shouldn't be talking about it, right? You should. I mean you, the learned guy, the one who sat with the sheikh, the one who studied overseas, the one who has chains of narration. You should be on the front line, right? But let's be honest. Are the likes of us from the Sunni, Ash'ari, Maturidi, from that side, are we on the front lines? Let's be honest. Nah, we over in Mr. Charlie's house eating biryani, right? And don't want to come nowhere near the macaroni and greens and the fried chicken, right?
I think if we be honest, a lot of African Americans never even knew what an Ash'ari was or a Maturidi was until the Salafis told us, or even what a Sufi was. We didn't know what it was. So, like you said, there's nobody checking for us. Nobody was coming to save us to a certain extent. We had to get that ourselves.
So that discussion we need to have ourselves. And that's why we have African American Islamic Summit. That's why we have a Black Imams Roundtable. But unfortunately, we've became Sunni, I hate to say it, just like they became Salafi, whatever, and lost our Blackness and became servants to others. And even in scholarship, even if we're smarter than them, we've already deferred our intellects to them. And they set the pace for how we deal with our community. And you can't deny that. And I say this, that's why I don't mind having these discussions, even with our people. But our people, unfortunately, as we say it, they don't want no smoke because they need economics, they need a job, all that go with it. Now you can tell that while you doing your academic intellectualizing stuff, but in reality, you scared of your own shadow. You know it, and I know it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And that's what we got to get over. I got to be a proud, educated, African-American Muslim who stands on some principles. And I'm not afraid to look at the guy who I know is oppressing us intellectually, academically, religiously, theologically. I know you playing games with me. I know you're not giving me the whole story. I know it. I can't just go along. There's a point where I got to say, nah, we got to educate my people. And I think that's something we can't just bypass that with saying, because we've done that. Let's just join ISNA and let them give us some free bags.
Yeah.
Now we can't, and we've done that. We're going to give you Negroes some backpacks. And hey, we got to be honest. We've seen it, and all of us know it. But the bad guy who says it, oh man, see, he's rocking the boat. No, if we don't warn, we all going to sink.
That's what I was trying to say prior to is I was just watching an interesting video on Instagram, right? I'm a millennial. Watching an Instagram video where someone was speaking about another global context. And he was like, he was comparing the word boycott to the word mustagni. And he was like, we shouldn't boycott, we should just be mustagni. We don't need you. Right. Very interesting, right? But I think that the essence of what he was trying to say was that we have to begin to control our resources. If we begin to control our resources, and I think that serious people on the side of both the Salafis and I shouldn't say serious people, I should say there are people on both sides of both the Salafi divide and the everybody else divide, right? Is they're really thinking about, okay, we need to, especially for our community, talking about us, we have to start controlling our resources. We have to start, we got to get back to being the Jeffersons. You know what I'm saying? And I think the ones who do that first and the ones who do that best within our community, their minhaj will win out the day. That's what I'm trying to say.
So do you believe, and to me, I understand and I agree with you, but for me, I look at that and say, man, we better than that.
I agree.
Right? You don't have to trick us because we're too, if I use my Yasser Qadhi, I love this way he says it. We're too unwittingly, what's his word? Man, come on. He got a beautiful way to say it. Blissfully unaware, excuse me. We're so blissfully unaware, translation, we stupid, right? We're so blissfully unaware that we can't have a real conversation. You got to trick us to make us have correct creed because we're so blissfully unaware. It's a way of saying, let me just give you some chicken and French fries and watermelon because we can't give you a book. To me, that's insulting. No matter how nice it sounds, at the end of the day, what you're saying is not you, but that line of logic is saying black people are too unintelligent, right, to have a real conversation. So just give them some welfare and they'll come along.
Yeah, I gotta pray.
Hey, bro, I'm saying I'm black, and I ain't like that.
I agree.
And I'm quite sure I'm black. I'm from the hood. I'm from the projects. I've been to the university. I've been in the streets. We run criminal enterprises. We're not unintelligent people.
Not at all.
Give us the plug, and we'll make it happen. So you give us the plug for guns, and you see what we do with them. You give us the plug for drugs. You give us the plug for music. You give us the plug for sports, but you don't give us the plug for religion.
I get your point.
Because we excel in everything else you give us. When you give us a fair, level playing ground, a playing field, we excel. But we can't excel in academics. We can't excel in theology and jurisprudence and Arabic language. We can't excel in that. And you can tell, here's the thing. Yasser Qadhi mentions that the University of Medina was the most prestigious university. And look at the blacks, what they come back with. It's no reflection, right? Go look around the world and see the graduates that are from University of Medina and see what they're doing in their countries, and then come to the inner cities, to America, and see what the graduates in the black community are doing, and you'll see my point. Yeah. Why is there a disparity in the quality of what is being produced? That must be saying something about us that I reject.
That's a lot.
But my point is, I'm just saying, like, can we have both? Can we build ourselves up? Because we did that already. We did it with the nation. We did it with the Ansars. We did it with Marcus. We know how to get money. We black. We did it with drugs. We know how to do stuff. So we can't do that and be educated. We can't do both. That's mustahil aqli for us. That's an intellectual impossibility for blacks.
No, like you said, I think that, and I have to go pray, but
okay.
Maybe
we got to close anyway. So say your last point, Habibi.
And again, I want to say thank you for allowing me on your platform. I appreciate it.
You're always welcome. We love you.
May Allah bless you.
Absolutely, we appreciate you being on, Aki. Mashallah, may Allah bless you.
But I think what you're driving, the point that you're driving home goes to something that's even more ancient within African American context, is the difference between Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois, the talented 10th versus the Tuskegee College, right? And I think that that's a problem that American Muslims, period, are dealing with, where you have American Muslims saying, why are these people going to study and be imams? They're not really qualified to be imams. Even if you get all of these degrees, that's not really their job. Like, that's not their disposition. They shouldn't be in the role anyway, right? I think that, like you said, we should have both, where we should merge these two ideologies of the talented 10th and the Tuskegee College of Booker T. Washington for our people. Not to say that the people in Tuskegee are not brilliant and they're not also academically and like intellectually brilliant, but like, we need both, right? We need intelligentsia, but we also need people to work. We need people to serve, right? And we need to control that. Like, and I think that's the point that you get into. That's not something that not to say that we should make people servants or anything, but what I'm saying is we need to, reinvigorate our people for both academics, intellectual prowess, but also for building, making America great again. Building.
That was real good.
So,
all right, Habibi. You know what? I really think we need to have that conversation. That last point you made, I think that's a deep. If you got time, I would like to continue that next week or whenever you got time, that last point you made, and bring that to our Islam as well. I think that's important.
Yeah.
Because we're afraid to talk about us as Black people and what we've done. We've already confronted the issue. You're right. We should have that conversation. So we welcome you for that one.
Jazakallah khair, barakallahu feekum. I'm going to go pray now.
You got my number, right?
I got your number.
Send me your number because I got it mixed up. Just send me a text.
Inshallah. Yeah, there's another, and that's my brother. That's not my brother, but that's my brother. The other Levon. May Allah bless you. I know you're listening. So
yeah, he's there. He thought he was up the deck. He's like, yeah, I've been waiting to rock the mic. Not yet. You remember that Mean Joe Green commercial with the white guy? He said, hey, Mean Joe. He threw him the shirt and said, you'll get your kid. You'll get your chance, kid. All right, I gotta go too. Barakallahu feekum. May Allah reward you. Y'all have anything to close out?
Do I have anything? Mashallah.
Imam Naeem?
I'm good.
All right, Levon, can you close us out with quick dua and we can go?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا محمد رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for blessing us with such a beautiful talk. Please bless the imams, the Black Imams Roundtable. Bless their followers. Bless those who listen, whether they like what they hear or don't like what they hear. Please bless them either way. Please guide us to right and straighten our affairs, and bless us to be of those who hear and obey. And we'll, inshallah, if you permit me, we'll end as they say the Sahaba ended with reciting Surat al-Asr. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. صدق الله العظيم. السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام. بارك الله بكم.
Wa alaikum salam.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.